This episode of Fresh and Buds is brought to you by the Warrior Within Brewing Company, one of the best, if not the best brewing company in all of Wraith. It is located just outside of the Savage Lands, and I tell you what, folks, I love these beers, and you know what? I'm really glad that they are sponsoring the show. I mean, hey, listen, I go in there and I always get the same three beers. First, I get the Route Stout. Excellent. The Kasai PA, oh my God, just totally underrated and going to have a big 2024. I think it's going to get some medals. And then finally, I love the Dusk Path Pilsner, which is a delicious, crisp lager. So please check out, the brewery just outside of the jungle, basically, the Savage Lands, and give them your support because they've been supporting this show. And hell, I might have one right after this. So without further ado, here's the show.
Fresh and
All right, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all of my buds. And it is the holiday week, and we are joined by Bob T from Gilded Raven Games out of Somerset, New Jersey. What is going on, my friend?
Hey, happy holidays to everybody out there and to you, obviously. And not a whole lot. Just getting ready for eating a lot of food and trying to avoid my relatives, as I think most people are this time of year.
Yeah, we try to we avoid the the bad ones and try to find the good ones, and hey, it's a hectic time of year, and especially for you, retailer. I'm sure it's pretty crazy, and but we got a great show for everybody. We're going to talk about how excellent of a community that Bob T has kind of garnered at Gilded Raven Games, and kind of just talk about it and use it as an example for maybe how other LGSs could possibly take a look at approaching Flesh and Blood that way. But before that, I do want to give a few shout outs. First of all, check out the Buds Discord, the best place to hang out ever in the world. And also check out the YouTube. Riptide Deck Tech is popping off over there. If you go check that out, I believe probably when you're listening to this, I'm also on Instant Speed Podcast doing the Speedies Awards, which should be very fun. I saw the winners, and I'm not going to tell you them because I'm going to tell you them on that podcast. And I was on Tales of Wraith with Alex, who is an excellent person. Can't wait to have him on the show. And check out the Twitter, all that fun stuff. We'll talk about it at the end. But hey, Bob, you're here. I want to talk to Bob, right? Because we're gonna have a good time. And first of all, how you doing? What's going on? I know that you have, we talked about Christmas, but how is Flesh and Blood life and beyond right now?
Oh, Flesh and Blood life is going great, honestly. Just a good old time. We kind of got a new wave of brand new players into the game recently. And by wave, I mean 9 people have just entered our hobby sphere. And they are taking the Flesh and Blood very well. Really enjoy the game, etc. So, yeah, no, everything's pretty sweet. Super excited to see what the new year brings. Can't wait for heavy hitters, honestly. That's my jam. I love Bright Lights, great draft format, but I'm not really. This is a personal failing. Steampunk and cyberpunk stuff always misses me historically. I remember when everybody was super excited for CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077, and it had Keanu, and then everybody was like, "Oh, this is the greatest thing ever made." And I was like, "I'm glad that you like it." And Bright Lights was the same way. I'm like, "This is objectively good, but I want a dude to bash somebody over the head with a rock." That's what I'm looking for from my fantasy.
Trust me, you're preaching to the choir. I talked about it on the podcast a billion times about, steampunk and stuff like that. But hey, we're beyond Bright Lights now, and we're moving on to heavy hitters, which is very exciting. I will say, I announced it on Twitter today that I will be spoiling a card from heavy hitters. I've seen it. And I tell you what, folks, you're gonna lose your minds. There's some crazy stuff going on with this set. I'm pretty excited to. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm excited. It's gonna be like I really need to knock it out of the park with my spoiler video. So I'm gonna have to like really get in the tank there. But Heavy Hitter is gonna be pretty freaking awesome. I can already tell based on what we've seen already. But let's talk about trading card games in general. You run a store that sells trading card games. So obviously you've had a passion for them, or at least a auxiliary passion for them. When did the trading card game life come into your life, Bob?
Oh, that's a lot of years ago because I'm old as shit. So I got into Magic as like my first trading card game. Really, like I had dabbled with like Pokemon card collecting as a child, right? Because like I was born in the '80s, so throughout the '90s it was like the Pokemon era. Like there was no way you escaped that. But I didn't really play that. A friend tried to get me into Yu-Gi-Oh! It didn't really stick. And that was the original sets, right? Like Exodia and that stuff. So then I kind of avoided card games pretty much my whole life until I got to college. It wasn't until like my freshman year of college, my buddy Timmy, who you can catch at my store, Gilded Raven Games, from time to time. He's the guy who does all the IT work and all the networking and all that things. And he's a blast to hang out with. One day he came in and was like, and this is around Lorwyn, so I think like 2006. And he came in and he was like, Bob, you got to try Magic. I know I've been trying to get you into it for like 5 years. You played Dungeons and Dragons. You got to try this. And I'm pretty sure my exact response was, keep that nerd shit away from me. I was like, no, absolutely not. I will not. It's too expensive, whatever, right? Um, Anyway, he basically sat me down. He gave me a blue deck and said, play. And I said, and I was like, crap. And that was fun. And that was pretty much the end of my life. Just died on the spot there. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into TCGs. I played competitive Magic for a number of years, doing little Pro Tour stuff. Just like all of my TV experiences, as soon as you point a camera at me, I just straight choke. So either my former career of poker or playing Magic back in the day. If you catch an old video or clip of me, you'll watch me just shit the bed. That's all I'm capable of doing on camera.
Well, hey, listen. Sometimes people can't play in primetime games. I get it. I've only been on camera once. Playing Flesh and Blood, and I got my ass handed to me.
I was so busy. So when I was on the stream for Flesh and Blood, it was like every time I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna play a card. They're like, move the die, put the counters on the thing. I was like, I'm so busy doing all of this stuff. I was like, I don't even know how to play the game anymore. Yeah. So it's like, can't be me, Chief.
Hey, listen, some of us like to hide in the shadows and sneak in the wins. We don't need to be all flashy about it. So I get it. Now, you obviously have a storied kind of history with card games in general. I mean, you mentioned poker, Magic.
Yeah.
When did I remember when I met you and we had a conversation. You were so adamant about how great Flesh and Blood was, and obviously, as a store owner, you have to support, the big ones, right? So. Yeah. But I remember you were like, I love this game and I try to convert people, right? Because
I do. Yeah.
which is so cool. Now, when did this love for Flesh and Blood come into your life?
So it actually is very tied to me opening the store. I didn't know this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like if you had a time machine, you went back like 2 years ago before Gilded, when Gilded Raven Games was just sort of like a thought, and like my wife and I's like like a back and forth, like, wow, we could probably open a good game store, don't you think? Like that kind of conversational level. So basically, what happened? All right, yeah, I'm just gonna be going on a tangent. So
That's
strap
fine.
in, viewers. You're just going on a Bob rant. I'll try to keep it as hinged as possible because I know you're really unhinged. All right. So part one, card games in general. So I played Magic, right? But I have dodged every failed card game my entire life. Like I couldn't get into anything else like L5R, Netrunner, every one of those goddamn anime games, all those cash grabs, like 10,000 games. I was just like, yeah, there's man. Even like successful games like Pokemon, couldn't really get into it. Found it to be just like so. I put out some sacrificial rat. I tutor out my sweeper. I tutor out the energy, and then I just sweep. So it's just that exact formula every game. Um, Using magic terms, playing Yu-Gi-Oh is like, oh, so this is just two storm decks going off at the same time. So like whoever goes off first and doesn't have like the answer just loses. It's like, didn't really grip me. Um, yeah, all these card games I just managed to dodge. I did have the exact same moment with Flesh and Blood though. So coming into Flesh and Blood after every freaking card game I dodged, uh, it was the professor. He put a video out for Flesh and Blood, and I had heard like I very loosely watched like Rudy Alpha Investments videos, so I had heard Flesh and Blood. I was like vaguely aware of its existence, but like not too interested. I was like loosely playing just like Commander Magic at the time, so I wasn't really like looking for anything competitive or anything different. Um, and yeah, and so what ended up happening was I watched this video and was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. Maybe I should check it out." And then, so Gilded Raven Games is owned by myself, my wife, and my best friend Sean. And so at this time, Sean was living in Boston. He lived in here in Jersey for a while. He moved for family reasons back to Boston. But he was coming down. This is like 2 Christmases ago. This is whenever Everfest had like just released.
Okay.
Everfest was new, and so Sean had come down for a ski trip. It was kind of ironic. He was gonna drive. He was gonna take a train from Boston because he doesn't like to drive. Um, Stay at my house, and then we would drive to Pennsylvania to go on a ski trip. And because we had like a day or two before, like he arrived on the train, but before we would go on our ski trip, I was like, "Hey, do you want to check out this game, Flesh and Blood?" And I showed him the same professor video. And we went there. We got a couple of. We went to a local game store. We grabbed a couple of Ira decks, and I think we both bought a box of Everfest because it was new. And we played our first game of the Ira mirror match with the demo decks after honestly the not so great YouTube tutorials on how to play. Like that could definitely be updated as a thought. But yeah, we played and then I had the moment. I had the moment that I had with Magic, but I hadn't had in any other game since, which was oh shit, that was fun. Like,
Yeah.
uh-oh. This one, I could feel my wallet like dying, a little bit, like the tumbleweed that would appear instead of the money was about the yeah. So I was like, uh-oh. So that was super fun. So we had taken it on the ski trip. We had played a bunch. By the way, he cracks a goddamn Grandeur of Valahai out of his box, and I looked at that box. I kept it contained, and there's like $12 of value in my box to this day. I was like, this,
Yeah.
but yeah. So that's our usual luck. I can't crack anything. But yeah, so I we actually shelve it. So we play it. We teach my friend Pat how to play. We teach a couple of our other friends how to play. We're running some games back and forth. I think we ran back to the store. We bought like the chain blitz deck, the Bolton blitz deck. We bought a bunch of blitz decks so that we could run them into each other a little bit. And then we had played on that ski trip, like because we were in the my friend has a I don't know what to call it, a goddamn castle on a mountain. So like
A
just a giant
lodge.
yeah, it basically is its own lodge. So we were all around the fire, just eating. Oh, our homie on this trip, I love him to death. He was like, "Don't worry, I'm gonna handle the groceries," and he just decided what we wanted for every lunch and every dinner for like 5 days was just a steak this thick, and it's like it's dope for the first one. You're like, well, we're gonna die. Like we need vegetables or something. But
We're
yeah,
gonna get gout, Just
yeah, yeah, dude, it was gout and flesh and blood that weekend, but it was a good time. But yeah, and then I actually tabled the game. So like I played it, I had determined that I did actually like this card game. I did like Flesh and Blood, and then I would not touch it again for another year.
whoa.
What would happen? Yeah, what would happen is so I spent like my whole life hanging out at the only game in town in Somerville, a game store.
Mhm.
And that store is legendary and notorious at the same time. A lot of good players. Actually, you're one of my friends and a guest that I know you've had, Craig Krempels, is like OG Target. Like he's like the gen before me of like pro tour grinder, like
Mm-hmm.
legendary card game player and stuff. So, but I used to hang out in that sphere, and then just due to a whole bunch of stuff I'm not going to get into, but not fiscal related. Target had to close its doors after 22 years in that February, like just after our ski trip, because like our ski trip was like January, and they had posted um, a like Facebook post that was like, oh, we're after 22 years, thanks for the support, we're going to be shutting down, and I was like kind of devastated. So like this is kind of a meme, but it's also like kind of dead ass. I was kind of just moping. Like if you know me, I'm an extrovert. I'm unhinged. I like shout and run around. I'm just like noodly and waving my arms, right? Like I'm just crazy. And then for like a good solid like 2 weeks, like I think Sean and my wife were just like sick of my shit because I was just like, like hey, Bob, you want to play some games? I'm like, I guess we could play some Path of Exile or some League of Legends. And they're like, you okay? I'm like, I'm doing great. They're like, Bob, are you sad because you don't have a game store anymore? I was like, Bob is sad because he doesn't have a game store anymore. And they're like, Bob, do you want a game store? I was like, I think maybe Bob wants a game store. And that's basically how we decided to open Gilded Raven Games. So it's just like, all right, fuck it, all in. Let's go. Let's just open our own store. And and then yeah, so I remember when we were doing our initial order for the store, we're getting all the board games, we're getting all the Magic product, we're getting Warhammer 40K, we're getting all the things that you see in the store. I said to Sean, I was like, hey, bro, can I light some money on fire? And he was like, what are you thinking? I was like, hear me out. Remember Flesh and Blood? And he's like, oh, yeah, that was a fun game last year. I was like, yeah. Dynasty is like right about to come out, I think. You want to just carry some Flesh and Blood? Like, who cares even if it doesn't sell, like we'll just at cost, owner benefits, and we'll run an armory or two and just basically make all the promos for ourselves, because like it'd be like him, me, my wife, and our friend Calvin playing, which is the four that you would need to fire. So we'll just basically just one of us will win a week and we'll get the gold foils, whatever. So we are like, all right, yeah, let's go, join the LSS thing, let's carry some Flesh and Blood. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. We didn't expect it. So you said TCGs, carry the big ones. Yeah, we do. We carry the big ones. We have Magic, we have Pokemon. I got One Piece in there. But you know what our highest revenue stream is?
Flesh and Blood.
It is. It's Flesh and Blood.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yep. It's a fab store. I didn't expect it either. That's why we carry so many singles.
Which is pretty incredible to hear, and it's a success story, and I it's certainly I guess, and we'll probably get to it after we do the fresh phase, but it's probably a little bit of an anomaly, but possible, which I think is the biggest thing here, right? Like I think is the thing we should be taking home, but that's pretty incredible, and I do want to talk to you a lot about the retailer side, but before we do that, you mentioned you kind of grinded a little bit, right? You've
Yeah,
done
back in
some,
the day, yeah.
yeah. You do, and you play some events, Flesh and Blood.
Sure.
Do you have any
Yeah.
aspirations as a player, or is it just hey, like this is this awesome game I get to support and play sometimes?
So, I mean, the answer is both yes and no. The answer is if I have the time, it is in my nature to get very hyper competitive, hyper fixated, and like try to shoot for the best, right? Um, I have a friend. You've met him. I don't want to drop his name because privacy stuff. But we know Craig Krempels, and Craig is his mental block. He can't play against Craig Krempels. He will choke when he plays Craig. That's his mental block, and he's talked to me about it many times. And then, ironically, because he's a very good player, one of the newer players, this person is that person's mental block. He's like, I can't beat this person, and I was like, oh man, I'm watching the ladder trickle down. That being said, I try to give these guys advice that like it's a mental thing. So like, how can you really rewire it? But I have the exact opposite. Um, from the battle hardened that one I streamed that I choke on the stream. Um, I played the previous round against Charles Dunn, and I have the exact opposite. I don't get mental blocks. So like when I was playing against Charles, this is literally how my experience went. So I sit down, my opponent's on Icelander. I look at my phone. It's the Battle Hardened in Pittsburgh, and I'm like, Charles Dunn, Charles Dunn. Like, I know that name. Why do I know that name? I was like, oh, he must be one of the runaways. He probably plays in like Yanji's team or something, or Daniel, all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's probably it. And I'm like, so I sit down, I'm like, you're one of the runaways, right? And Charles is like, oh yeah, I am. I was like, cool, cool, cool. I was like, great, all right. So yeah, I roughly know my people. And then I'm sitting there and I'm playing. And it's until like 70% of the way through, I was like, I know why I know Charles's name. Like, I know what he did at Nats. Okay. Oh. And then so instead of getting a mental block, I try to tell the kids this. I call them the kids, they're like adults, but like I try to tell the
The
try
young
to tell the
ones.
players, like don't go, oh no, I'm playing against Charles Dunn. I did the exact opposite. I get hungry, right? Like I'm like a panther in a bush, and like Charles is this like big meaty gazelle. I'm like, I'm gonna take him down. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get him right here. I'm gonna get him. Like, so my aspirations as a player, boogeyman side events,
Oh yeah.
just show up and end people's runs to get top 8 for no apparent reason. Like, I would love to do it myself and get there, but like I can't get the reps and I don't have the time. So can I be really competitive? Probably not. Only if like the business starts running itself, which is based on my 25-hour a day, 8-day a week work week. Unlikely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm the same way. I get a little bit hungry too. Like, when I'm playing against a good player, I started playing in Jersey, right? So like
Sure.
Armory up at Highlander and Booton
Sure.
was Craig. It was
Yep.
Daniel Rakowski. It was Michael
Yep.
Dalton. It was Michael Fang. It was
Yep. Yep.
Yuanji.
Yep. Yep.
It was like I had no right ever like winning a game, like especially for the first couple months, and like I lost a lot, but like
Yep.
I wanted to get to that point because I was like, okay, like I can play card, I know I can, right? So like you're just
Yeah.
like, God, I got to get to that point, and
Mhm.
I remember when I first started picking up wins. That's when you get like extra confidence and validation,
Yeah.
and then you're like, all right, now I can end some people's runs to top 8, like you said.
See, I like the I like it. It's a meat grinder though, right? Like so, like playing against those absolutely legendary names. Like we know their names for a reason. They're all
Mhm.
really talented, really strong, good players. And getting to play with them in your locals is fantastic because, like, yeah, you might be like, wow, I'm gonna 0-3 every week for the rest of my life because literally the top pros play in my LGS. But look at it from a different perspective. Now, when you go play side events or you go play other places, right? You have played against the best. You only got reps against the best. So people who like don't know how to block, people who don't know how to pitch stack properly, people who don't know how to like do the things that make those guys really good, and that gives them that little percentage edge that beats you every game. You might not be doing it at their level, but you're doing it a lot higher level than Todd from Wyoming. And then like he sits down and then he just hits you with Bonds Vans history combo and you die. But so it doesn't.
Well,
But
it's like the
you
Spartans,
you get
right?
in there and yeah,
Yeah, it's like
right.
there's 300 Spartans. Not all
Mhm.
of them were like, the greatest warriors of all time, but they were still one of the 300
Spartans.
Spartans, right? So
Right.
like, they're still going
Yeah,
to toe to toe with like everybody.
exactly.
So,
Right. They get into a fight with anyone else, they're almost certainly going to win. They might not beat Leonidas, but like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
going to tussle and win against other like normies. So
Yeah. Normies. Yeah, Spartans versus the normies. I
yeah.
can't, I can't wait for
But
that Discovery Channel show.
that, oh man, that'd be fun. But
But
yeah,
that's cool. Like, and now, like, in terms of the game overall, like as a like a retailer, as a player, as a fan of the game, we all look, especially around this time of year, we always look to the next year. And luckily,
sure.
this is like I think the first like kind of Q4 where we got like a lot of information for the next year from LSS. What's some things that you would like to see come from the game and LSS in general next year and beyond?
Ooh. Uh, I don't know how to answer this because I have a little bit of information that I'm not allowed to talk
Oh,
about.
okay. Well, don't
So
spoil
like I
anything.
can't I can't say everything that I know. Some of the things that I do know are very exciting and super cool.
Hmm.
I think this year is going to be the greatest yet for the game.
Whoa.
Um, so like heavy hitters is dope. But what comes after is very exciting, and that's all I can.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, listen, that sounds incredible, and I'm gonna grill you after this episode.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tell
As soon as
me,
we're not recording,
tell
I'll
me.
tell you. I'll tell you. I'll just out all my sources and everything that. No, no, no. But
I'm going straight to Gilded Raven. You know.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll meet you. Actually, all the rain. I couldn't get to my store yesterday. I live. Should I? Would that be doxing myself? I probably don't want to yell where I live.
Yeah,
Anyway, yeah, probably don't do that.
don't do that.
This is why you can't put me in front of a camera. Like I told you, I'm unhinged. I just will literally say anything that comes to my mind, and I can barely pump the brakes. But yeah, yeah. So my if you're a Jersey resident, you'll know that like we got a lot of rainfall and just everything flooded. So I
Hmm.
realized I was on an island. I was like, time to go to the store yesterday, and I was like, JK, guess I'll just stay home and play Path of Exile. That's what I did.
Yeah, but that's awesome. I'm excited that you've at least hinted at some really cool stuff, and I think with the amount of information they've given us, I think we're all pretty stoked, even like from the OP standpoint, which we've talked about on the
Mhm.
show
Yep,
and
yep.
stuff like that. And obviously, product releases is the biggest thing. It will be continue to be
Yeah.
the biggest thing because that's what gets people in the
So
stores.
yeah, so from like a retailer perspective, Heavy Hitters looks really good. It looks pretty much like Outsiders, but different classes. It should be a pretty good draft environment, I think. It seems like it's bringing a lot of good cards and a lot of power to characters. I am a Kasai, or I was a Kasai player in Blitz, so like CC Kasai is very exciting to me, and CC Kasai with allies that don't have Phantasm is very exciting to me because illusionists and poppers are cool, but like not that's not my flavor win. But like
Hmm.
actually having to stab my homie to death is pretty fun for the game. So like that's exciting for me. From a retailer perspective, trying to think about this from that angle.
Well, what would you like to see your community get out of Flesh and Blood through the channel of your store or other stores out there?
Just a good experience, like always.
Hmm.
Like the reason I think you had asked me this question, and I kind of like went on a hinged about how cool Craig Crimples is instead of like actually answering
He's not that
the
cool.
question.
Don't
He-
don't
He's
don't
cool. I
blow up
love Craig.
don't blow up
No,
his
he's cool.
ego.
He's the best.
He is the best.
Um, yeah. What? So our store's Flesh and Blood community is probably built on me evangelizing the game a lot.
Hmm.
I have a tendency to sit around in the store and people will walk up to my counter and they'll point at a game that I won't mention because I don't want to talk bad about a specific game right now. But it's in a spot that I think the community genuinely finds it to be um, overpriced and unfulfilling and unsatisfying. And they still play it, but like it's more or less like Stockholm syndrome still playing it. And a lot of times, these people will lament to me that they wish they still had a competitive game to play, or the misconception that Flesh and Blood is expensive, which I disagree with entirely. I don't think Flesh and Blood is expensive. Um, but they will come to me and they'll be like, you love this stuff in the store. You got banners all over for it. You play it yourself. Tell me about it. And like that's pretty much all I'm ever looking for. People come in and I'll be like, "Hey, this great game," and I'll kind of explain to them why I think the game design is genius because every card in your hand represents well resources, attacks, defense, and then it's not just like rock paper scissors of that, but cards protect life and life protects cards. There are moments where you don't want to take the Red Widowmaker for 15 and two Blood Rot boxes, but you're like going down to one and not having the resources to pay for the Blood Rot box is like not great. But I got the throat here. They got 6 life. I got 26 damage in hand. Like it's gonna be faces the place, and you hope that the clap pack works out. But you know, um, the game itself is really well designed and then also has that thing that I want from Magic, right? When I was talking about Pokemon feels a little samey for me, Yu-Gi-Oh feels a little samey for me. A lot of those other games just like really didn't click for me. Keyforge didn't have deck building, so I was like, what am I doing with this? Scrapping packs. I like sealed, but like eh. Um so it I usually will give the sales pitch that like what's amazing about the game is besides the game design philosophies, wizards do not play like ninjas, does not play like brutes, does not play like warriors, right? And then even within that, like Katsu does not play like Fi, does not play like Ira, does not play like Benji. They don't play even within their own brackets similarly. There's some level like in this ninja card, like we'll look for Salt the Wound, like that's to be expected, but like Katsu most of the time is playing like a combo deck and Fi in Magic terms, red deck wits, right? It's the face of the
Hmm.
place, got to go fast, kill, 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 kill. Um, and then you need a PhD in math to play Kano, but like if you have your PhD in math, you sit there and you do the thing where you like hold up 4 cards. You ever see your opponent? I'm just grabbing a group of random cards, and like they're like they do the thing where they're like they turn that one sideways and they put that one face down and they're like pout on their fingers and they're like, "Do you have 4 blues in hand?" And you're like, "Nah, I have 2 blues in hand." Like, all right, yeah, you're dead. They just do the whole math. Like it's great. It's wonderful that all these things are different. You've got aggro decks, mid range decks, control decks. Fatigue is sort of its own thing for Flesh and Blood, right? But there's all that variation. Like there's gonna be something that you're gonna grip onto. It could be character art because a lot of the art is really evocative and really interesting. It could just be the way that the game plays, the mechanics. It could be the competitive scene. For some people, I explain to them like LSS only sells one playmat. So if you want this cool playmat, you got to go earn it. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I want to play on the cool playmat. I want to earn it." So like, there's a little bit of something for everyone. And I feel like when I'm looking at somebody who's slightly interested, or they want to know what Flesh and Blood is, or they're just decided like they watched the professor's video and they're like, I'm gonna go, want to Google, Flesh and Blood near me, Gilded Raven pop up at the top. And I'm like, "Oh, I'll go there." So like whatever it might be, when they come in and they come talk to me, I usually give them this kind of spiel that like I just truly love the game. I think its game design is great. I think the characters are cool. I love Living Legend. I think it is the best goddamn idea I've ever heard. Um, a lot of times players, especially like, the other big 3 card games, they come to me and they're like, "Well, doesn't that mean my deck's gonna get banned?" Like, no, it doesn't mean your deck's gonna get banned. Okay, so just like, I'm a Magic player, so I'll usually use Magic as my comparison point. Magic has its set rotation, right? You play standard, you play for, these for a couple years, then boom, a third of your deck is gone or whatever. The viable cards are gone, so you're
Hmm.
on to your next thing, right? That's effective. You can play Pioneer, or you can play Modern, right? Like back in my day, used to play it after type 2. Yeah. So like so like yeah, you can play Modern. Your deck might function there, probably not, but like maybe you love it, so you'll just die, right? I feel like that's an underrated line. Just lose. I'll just
Yeah.
sit down. I'll have a good time. I'll just lose. Fuck it. I'll just lose. Uh, Underrated line of thought. But that being said, for Flesh and Blood, sorry if I'm going long winded
No.
and ranty and tangenty here. Um, you know, you can. Oh shit! I lost my train of thought entirely now.
Well, Living
I told you to
Legends
get on.
is an amazing
Oh, right,
way to
Living
kind of
Legend, yeah.
rotate
Mhm,
decks without actually rotating cards, I guess is probably the best way to say
exactly.
it.
It's a self-correcting system that says, like, "Hey, if we release a character that's too good," Starvo, he will just go over into that format, and that is its own format. It's not being banned, it's just being moved from Classic Constructed to Living Legend.
Hmm.
You can still play there, right? And obviously after the Starvo, ban list that dropped the other day, if you love Icelander, sure, like, get in there, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing that stops you from doing that. And I have LL decks, so like it's coming to the Raven. There's most of us have LL decks at this point. And you could be like, LL? I'm waiting for LSS to go like, "Hey Bob, you could run LL armories." And as soon as I do, I will put it in the rotation, right? Because like I try to make sure everybody's getting what they want. So we try to run we try to do a rotation of draft, then free blitz, because I think blitz is great for getting new players in. And
Hmm.
you know what? I think it's cool to win a $40 cold foil Santa Claus. I think that's what they're sitting in. And I don't want you to pay for it. I just want you to come and have a good time and try. Right? Just have a blast. And a lot of the other guys, if you're a new player and you're like intimidated, you're like, "Oh, my friend David plays at our store all the time. And he was very good." If you're like, "Oh no, David is the PBEG," The odds are David is going to play some nonsense because he's like, whatever. I'm just going to like if I don't win my 38th Santa Claus, who cares, right? So
Yeah.
like you have an actual genuine shot. It doesn't cost you anything. Just have him come, come play, have a good time. Classic constructed for us sweats is in the rotation, and then like if they could put LL in there, I'd probably that'd be my rotation. I do sealed now and again, but people like draft more than they like sealed, so
Yeah.
you know, kind of pre-releases only.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great way to. I mean, I see the rotation kind of model a lot, especially in the successful stores. Sometimes it'll be like 1 month is this, 1 month is the other thing, but it's a great way to get. And I love free blitz, right? Because low cost, whatever. So what you lost.
11.99 for a blitz deck. Just pick it up and go. Yeah, just
Yeah,
learn the
yeah.
game. See if you think it's fun.
Exactly, and people are want to help people learn, and that's the beautiful thing. But now, before we get more into the retailer side, I want to know some of your favorite cards in the game before we really get deep, Bob. So we're going to do the fresh faves.
Okay.
Who is your favorite hero?
Good question. So I feel like there's two answers to this. Um, I'm just gonna go with what my heart says. It's Vincent. It's Vincent the Iron Maiden. Um, I I picked her up because if you've ever met me, I wear a Ghost T-shirt almost every single day. That's my favorite
Mm-hmm.
band. I have like 40 different Ghost T-shirts. Plug Ghost, great band. Go listen to them. They're amazing. Their art's awesome as well. Just buy shirts. You don't ever have to wear anything else. Anyway, I digress. So that's my favorite band. My second favorite band is Iron Maiden. So I was like, oh, there's a character with my second favorite band. I'll go play this one. And then I just fell in love with her. I think rune gating is super fun, and I think I love the I pay one life flail, and everybody's like, you should be running enter any rune blade weapon here, and I'm like, uh-huh. And then I flail them for one, and I create a rune chant because I don't want to block it, and then I close my chain, and I create two more rune chants, and I have three, and I'll go into four, and they're like, oh god, he's gonna widespread annihilate me with a one card hand, and I'm like, fun. So Vincent's my favorite.
That's a great answer. What's your favorite weapon? Is it that flail?
That's gotta be no, it's I don't want to run off screen. Uh, it's either the flail or it's Duskblade. Um,
That's
I like.
that's a card
Apparently, I'm just a
in
rune blade
LL.
player. Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
it is. I was like when we went to Barcelona, I went to play LL, and I wanted desperately to play something with Duskblade, but I went into the tank and I got some nice friendly advice and deck building tips from most of the runaways. Like I talked to Daniel, I talked to Yangji and Yangji, and I talked to everybody, and they were like, "Bob, just play Starvo," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, but that's what so I was sad. So LL, as soon as it comes to my store, you will see me with some absolutely unfunctioning, stupid deck that just plays Bloodsheet Skeleton and Duskblade, and I'm gonna just make it work because they're banned, and I just want to play them because they're cool. So
Hey, listen, I support it. What's your favorite equipment? Hmm.
oh my god, am I just a Runeblade player?
I think we're getting
Oh
to that
no, because I'm
point.
like I'm like I'm like what's my favorite equipment? I'm like, well, like Crown is like probably the best equipment in the game, but that doesn't make it my favorite. So I'm like, what's my favorite? And I'm like, is it Spellbound Creepers? Oh no, I'm just a
Uh,
Runeblade player. What did I do? I'm gonna go play Wizard.
oh man.
Yeah, it's Spellbounds.
Well,
It's Spellbounds.
Mr. Viz is gonna love this because my buddy Gary just always talk about creepers math. I'm like, stop!
Creepers.
I don't know about math. Math? What's math? Just,
I I have a so my Vincent deck has a little gimmick in it. It's
mm-hmm.
actually what killed Charles Dunn. It's what kills most good players.
Oh yeah.
Only yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I play a bad card, a bad card. People will often look through the deck and go, "Why do you have Bloodspill Invocation in your deck? Like that card is dog shit. Why? That's a bad card. Don't put that in your deck." And I go, "Well, the thing is, when you're about halfway through the match." and you've red pummeled your opponent twice, when you are floating 2 resources with 1 card in hand or 1 card in arsenal, there's only 1 card on Earth that they can think about, right?
Yeah.
They're only going, "That's a fucking pummel. I know it's a pummel.
Yeah.
That's the 3rd red pummel that's coming for me." And just like in that Charles match, Charles actually, so I was sitting there, I was poker faced up because I knew I wasn't pummel. I was sitting there very quietly, and he was like parsing out his turn, and he literally says out loud, he's like, "All right, 1 card in hand." I said, "1 card in hand." He's like, "All right, that's pummel." And I was like, "Oh, you're about to fall in the trap. You're about to fall for the spellbound creepers trap." And then he gives me his whole hand because he doesn't have to discard. He go like I was swinging for I had like red enveloped, so I think I was swinging 9 fizz, 2 rune chance. So he pitches a yellow for the AB for the rune chance. And then he blocks 8. He goes, "I block 8. You want to?" He was like, and he goes to me like reactions, and I was like, "I do have reactions." He's like pummel, and he goes to like the notepad to add like lose 5 life basically, and I was like, "No, it's not pummel." And then I had 2 resources floating, so I activate Spellbound Creepers, and I watch the oh shit hit his face as I go, Bloodspill Invocation? You said that's, before, after blocks, I was like, no D reacts, right? He's like, no. I was like, all right, so that's going to hit for 1. I'm going to basically gain a free action point off of Bloodspill Invocation. And it's also going to create me 3 rune chance. And then I was like, cool. All right, I'm going to Rune Gate Widespread Destruction for 9. And he had no cards in hand. I was like, I was like, fell for the trap. Anyway, it's Spellbounds. Love the card. 10 out of 10.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, now do I got to ask, because the last one here is best run-of-the-mill card, non-attack action, whatever. The random cards that you put in Bloodspill Invocation. There you go. You got a Runeblade player through and through with Pop T right there. That's an awesome.
It's so bad. As soon as you said, "What's your favorite card?" I was gonna, like, my actual first thought was, it's like Nourishing Emptiness. That's a fun card, right? Like that's what my brain went to. Then I was like, "Oh God, am I just a Runeblade player?" Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nourishing Emptiness is cool, but like the cool things that you could do with some, and I do love that like shows that, hey, listen, there are cards in this game that we should all be just looking at. It doesn't matter if it ends up being good enough. Just look at them.
The game is really unsolved. That's what I also like about it. Like, the good players are good and they're good at mathing it out and they're good at identifying good cards and stuff, but like there are plenty of cards that just don't see play and love, and I think they're actually really good because people haven't really solved it yet. So
yeah, absolutely. It's just you get stuck in one school of thought. But now let's talk about another school of thought. I'm really good at at doing segues. So your incredible store, Gilded Raven Games, Somerset, New Jersey, is popping off Flesh and Blood, right? Pretty great. It's a great location. It's right off 287 and right in the center of the state. People from New York can come down, people from Philly, like relatively easily kind of get up there if they need to. And you're doing such a great job there with Flesh and Blood. And I was going to ask you about the business origin, but we already got the business origin, which is pretty great. So, and you alluded to the fact that all of a sudden Flesh and Blood kind of took off at the store. And you also told us like how you pitched the game. But like, how did it really begin to grow? Like, when did you start noticing numbers at armories and stuff like that?
Okay, so yeah, one of the big things is I think our average armory fire is about 22 players, which I know is very high in general. We do have a lot of people who commute up from Philly, right? Like they play down at like the top deck area, or they're literally from Philly. Like Young drives all the way up from Philly each day, and then we get like the Highlander crew, the North Jersey guys. They have a tendency to come down. But they're often, doing like battle hardens and callings and stuff. So when they're around, they usually show up to play at the Raven for locals, but they're not always about. But that being said, how did it take off? So yeah, so we put it in the store. My friend from Philly, or actually really my wife's friend from Philly, came up to like celebrate our launch weekend of our store, and he was just like, "Wow, Flesh and Blood's really cool." And then he just took to the Emperor. He was like, "Oh, the Emperor is such a cool character. I want to play that one. Where's the precon?" I was like, nope. And he was like, guess I'll die, and just started basically buying by the case of our dynasty. Pretty much bought all of our dynasty out that weekend. And I had cracked like basically an entire Arachne deck out of a couple boxes I had bought. And was like, all right, so I'm gonna be an Arachne main, which has worked out great.
Mm-hmm. Hey, the
Um,
time's coming.
our time will come. Me and the Spider Boys with our spoodly doots. Love spider fight. Um, Yeah, so he had just kind of bought a lot of product that day, and weirdly enough, a bunch of other, because our store would have been open for like a week, right? Like a week tops. And we had a bunch of, brand new customers, which would become total regulars, by the way. I now I'm like invited to these people's weddings. I've watched them grow, and over this last year, it's been fantastic. But like they were also like, wow, what's all this? What's the hubbub? What's this flesh and a blood, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do I get this red moisture all over me? And so they were like kind of checking it out. Our one friend and his wife, was his wife's first card game ever. She's still playing. She loves it. And yeah, so we just kind of started playing. And I was like, all right, guys, LSS gave us some gem status, so let's run an armory. They gave us a little promo, so I'm gonna get to give out like all this stuff, lots of free things. This was the beginning. I think for the first like 2 months, actually, we only ran free blitzes on Saturday to try to get people into the game. Um, and yeah, so like the first week, um, I 3-0'd. Bam! I'm such a god. Uh, the second week, I 0-3'd. Somebody must have had a camera near me or
Yeah.
something. It's the only explanation.
Somebody's taking a selfie.
And then the third week, if you build it, they will come happened. So on the third week of us firing Armory, because each one was 8, so we had 8 for the first week, 8 for the second week. Then the third week we had close to 16. I'd have to doom scroll all the way to the. We've run like 150 Flesh and Blood events now
Oh
because
yeah.
we will fire on demand drafts all day long. We'll fire off as much. If we could have 2 Armory kits, we would do 2. If they gave us 3, we would do 3. I mean, like, if I will run Flesh and Blood events all day, every day, all night, forever. But yeah, so then some of the community started coming. People who played over at like Red Seal and Bearded, and down from Greg's and up from Highlander. People were hearing that our store was like kind of good for Fab, which was kind of news for me. I was like, yeah, I like it. That's a pretty good game. I would say I'm more of a board game Magic 40K store, but sure, yeah, we can be a Flesh and Blood store. Why not, right? If that's what you guys want to play. So we just kind of started to lean into it more and more and more. And then it wasn't until Pro Tour Baltimore. I can't remember what month that is anymore.
April
Um,
maybe.
yeah, maybe April.
Yeah.
So like in our grand opening was November 18th, right? So we were already kind of like really popping off of Flesh and Blood. The community had kind of just grown, and we were still bringing in new players. Like I said, we had just got a new wave of new players. Sorry, I know that this is unhinged and ranty and tangenty.
No, you don't gotta
I'm
apologize.
aware, but I can't stop myself from doing it. Like actually, our community Discord, I think, is probably one of the major contributing factors. We have a very active Discord. Even right now, it is just I've been getting pings in the corner of my screen. And Kyle, one of our so I remember the day Kyle came into the store. He was looking for a Flesh and Blood playmat, and we had gotten 4 of the like 20 I ordered because they were so scarce and elusive at this point. And we had sold 3. We had 1 left. Kyle came in and was like, "Do you have a Flesh and Blood playmat?" And I was like, "I got the last one over there." And he was like, "Oh, Gib." And then and it was like, "Oh, you guys like Flesh and Blood here?" And I was like, "Why?" And now subsequently, Kyle had posted a random little ping in the Discord like I want to say like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month now. My time is a flat circle, so I can't keep track of anything.
Yeah.
It posted a ping that was like, "Hey, if you're doing the meme where like, what's Flesh and Blood?" At this point, I'm too scared to ask you. Like, if you want to figure out what Flesh and Blood is a little bit, you've been slightly interested. You see everybody running around talking about it at the Raven all the time. Come on in. It was like a Wednesday night or something. It was some like random time. And he was like, "Come in." And I happened to have to pop in to mail some stuff. I had no intention of coming in that day because usually Wednesdays for like 40K, and like I love the 40K players, love to give them a home, but like rolling dice ain't for me because I can't roll higher than 2. So like that's for them. And I pop in, I look at like, so if you've been to our store, we custom built like these 8 big board game tables. They're felted. They got like wood rails so you can't roll your dice off the thing. They're great for like 40K and for Star Wars Legion, that kind of stuff. Um and then we have some just like extra setup card tables kind of just jammed towards the front of the store because we're full house a lot. So I come over there and all 3 of those tables, there's just like 12 people. I swear to God, I've never seen before. And I try to make an interpersonal connection with everybody who comes in my store. I try to,
Yeah.
make them feel as comfortable and at home as possible. Um, and I look over, there's just like 12 people I've never seen before, and they're all just learning from Kyle how to play Fab. And I was like, what? Like, what is happening right now? And then I think I launched our social play to make sure that they could play some UPF like that next week. I was like, we
Oh,
hadn't gotten the
nice.
kit, but there were like skirmishes and battle hardens, and there was Pittsburgh and Barcelona, all that stuff. So we kind of delayed it a little bit. And then yeah, I'd say from like a retention standpoint, I think everybody that Kyle taught how to play that day is still here, still playing. They're all just like, that was the best game I've ever played. I'm like, that's what I keep saying. Like, you
So,
know?
well, so that's like a great example of, so you provide the space and you allow someone like Kyle to say, "Hey, I want to teach people," because like in reality, growing a community ends up really falling on the community, right?
Yes.
And Kyle took it upon himself to say, "Hey, I'm going to teach people," and sometimes you just need the space and like the fact that you were like, "Whatever, yeah, you come
Yeah.
come
Yeah,
learn how to
whatever. Yeah.
play." I was like, "This is where people play games. That's what the point of the
That's
store
exactly
is."
it. Yeah.
So that's a really interesting thing, and like maybe like it's something that maybe other retailers could even like talk to their own little community. Like if they're struggling,
Mhm.
it's like, well, maybe even like a Discord is a
Yeah.
huge like thing. Like it's the Buds Discord has helped
Yep.
my little community here and other Flesh and Blood communities. So it should be no different for stores. So that's really cool to hear. Now I do got to ask, it feels like it's just a conversation all the time, on podcasts, especially lately, about like new players, getting new player retention.
Yeah.
It's a difficult game, and like and like what we said earlier, like I could have easily like at Highlander after getting my ass beat every week, I could have just said, well, I don't want to just lose
Right.
all the time. Uh,
Yeah.
Funny enough, I get more frustrated when people don't show up. I don't care if I'm losing; I just want to play. But like
Yeah.
but some people just feel differently. And something I noticed with Flesh and Blood, like LSS, in some recent conversations and publications, is they're starting to use the word on or the term onboarding, right? Um, so what would you say is something that we could use in the game as good onboarding tools for new players, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we have like blitz decks are great. You can give it to them and you
Mhm.
can try to teach people, but like and like I think they wanted classic battles to be it, but it just wasn't. So
Yeah.
what would you say would be a good tool?
Uh, so I think from an onboarding perspective, one of the things that I do, and I've heard this experience and even experienced it myself right when I had started around Everfest, is that the tools to learn how to play the game online are not exactly great. There's like a couple YouTube videos where there might be better content now to actually learn how to play, like sit down and like watch a YouTube video, probably not from Flesh and Blood TCG, a YouTube channel. I think that's their YouTube channel.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so like historically, so like I told you, Kyle had gotten like 9 players in, but up until Kyle doing that for the last year, usually whenever anybody says like, "Oh, I'm interested," right? Like sales pitch landed, Bob. I'm now interested. Let me check out Flesh and Blood. I had a tendency to be like, "All right, when you got time, or right now if I had time, sit them down, bust out the playmats." I usually would grab my Kasai deck, which is a full build Kasai deck, and my wife's Cheerios Briar, which is a full build deck as well, right? So I don't think she runs Tunic there, but like both have Crowns of Providence and stuff. So
Hmm.
you got the the big boy cards, right? The kind of expensive cards, and I would sit them down and be like, "This is the Blitz format. Explain that versus CC." I'd give them how to play, right? Like this is, what this is a red, this is yellow, this is a blue, this is how you pitch. I often ask them what card game they come from. Most of the time, the answer is Magic. So I'm like, how you tap your lands, you float your mana, you cast your spell. It's like, we don't do that. We're actually going to declare our action. We're going to play our card basically, and then we're going to pay for it, because that's usually the number one thing that like jars players. And then like I'll show them, Briar's wide because it runs Force of Nature and Channel Mount. And I was like, Kasai is tall, right? We're just gonna stack up damage and just thrust with the sword really hard. So like, do you want to go? These are two aggro decks. Do you want to go wide? Do you want to go tall? They'll choose whichever they want. We'll shuffle up, and I'll like walk them through. And sometimes they get to it really quickly. Actually, the general meme in the story is that everybody on their first game just fucking demolishes me. No matter which deck they choose, like I usually end up losing. They're like, "Do you throw?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just bad." But like, um, then however that plays out. But I have found that people are like, I grabbed a couple Ira decks. I went home. I tried to play my wife on the kitchen table. We loaded up the official YouTube video, and it was like, this means what the hell does it go again? What's a resource? So I think like probably a good free YouTube series that LSS themselves put up would help this problem the most. Um, and then as far as products go, I did really like the Clarion Community College. Um, I can't remember the name of the actual product. The
Round the table.
Round the Table. Thank you. Yes, the Round the Table is excellent to get players in. In fact, actually, one of the new players that Kyle brought in, Ben, he just grabbed that and he built the Melody deck in Blitz, and it does okay. It does surprisingly okay.
Yeah.
It does the melody thing. It's all about the what is it the final song, whatever it's called.
Final act, yeah.
Final act, yeah. It's all about final act, and it's just Art of Wars and cash-ins and cash-outs, and it's just go hard, and then encore, final act, encore, final act, pretty much. Snapdragon Scalers, I presume, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you know what? He got into it from that product. So I mean, Classic Battles is good, but typically when I see Classic Battles leave my store, I see somebody buy 3 copies of it, and they're like,
Yeah.
they're like grumbling most of the time. So like, I don't know if that was the product, yeah, to get players in. I do think that they should start looking at, so like the Blitz precons are great. I think CC precons would be good too.
Hmm.
I think probably what they need to do is print either rare or majestic equipment a little bit more often with a like slightly higher power level. I think that is a complaint that I see frequently on the internet.
Hmm.
I peruse the 2 Flesh and Blood Reddits whenever I'm bored. I had COVID like right after, so I came back with a souvenir besides an LSS hoodie, whatever the hell that is, from Barcelona. I came back with COVID, and so I was on a Robitussin addled high while replying to new players on Reddit, where somebody asked that exact same like question. And I try to always guide new players on there too. Like whenever I have downtime, like late night, trying to wind down after a long day or whatever, I have a tendency to just go there and just be like, "Flesh and Blood is great," like, and answer new players' questions and help them get into the game. But yeah, it's just diligence. It's just community building. I think if a store doesn't give a shit about Flesh and Blood and don't want to give a shit about it, it's just never going to succeed there.
Yeah.
I don't want to get like too gross and in the weeds, but I don't understand store owners that do that, because like, have you looked at the margins? Like selling Flesh and Blood's way better than selling that other game that you get like 5% and they hold a box cutter to your throat with all the rules.
Yeah, well, some people just they want to just own the business and go home, and it's to each their own, and they don't. It's not why they're in it, but that's okay, and I think it could be a little tough there, with some other things. But I will say, I believe Flesh and Blood did put out a new learn to play thing.
Okay,
that
yeah,
is interactive too. It's like a video that's
great.
interactive. And
Yeah,
I looked at it briefly. I played around with it. I can't really tell if it's better than what we've had
sure.
because I kind of
Yeah,
learned just through playing. So like,
yeah,
and I already know how to play. So it's like, I don't know if
yeah.
I it would really like, but it
Yeah,
is
you need a
something.
litmus test, a Skinner box person or something to just like actually go in there and see if they can play after watching it.
Yeah, exactly. So these are all good things. Yeah, I think the CC pre-cons would be really neat because I remember like at one point Magic had like little standard decks that you could
Mhm,
buy. I forget what the
mhm.
hell they called them. They were like battle decks or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I remember them.
And like
Yeah,
you could win some games with them. It wasn't like I think you kind of have to strike that balance. And but I think before they get that balance, the thing you mentioned about equipment at like
yeah.
rare being a little bit better,
Mhm.
it would have to take that to kind of like the bridge of the gap for the
Yeah,
legendary stuff. But
sure.
before we get to some listener questions, is there anything exciting coming down the pipes for Gilded Raven Games in terms of Flesh and Blood and hopefully the growth of the business?
Um, yeah. So actually, we launched our website recently. It mostly works. It's gildedраvengames.com.
Cool.
You can support us by popping on there. That would be cool. We have lots of singles as well. When I say it mostly works, I mean it like functions as a web store and a website goes. We are finding little weird things, like Sean has a little bit of work for me to do, like measuring out like the dimensions for certain board games. So like he has it's supposed to be like a hidden tag that just says Bob, and that's like work for me to do. And if you go like click on our board games and you want to like sort by like categories of board games, we cannot figure out why that one shows up because we have a bunch of like hidden categories, but Bob shows up. So if you go there and you click Bob, you can see those are all the games I have to actually like measure and get their weights for. And if you happen to buy one, you will literally give me work to do, like
No.
on the spot, like instantly make me have to do work because I have
Now
to go
people are
get
gonna
it.
go look for the Bob
Yeah,
tag.
they're gonna just whatever that's on my list. Like I've been putting it off for like a week, but yeah. So like the web store is up. That's super cool.
Sweet.
We are vendoring at Pro Tour LA. I'll
Oh,
be
very
there.
nice.
Yeah, I'll be like,
Yeah, go say
whatever.
hi, folks.
Yes,
If you're at
exactly.
LA, please go say hi to Bob and the crew.
Yeah, yes, just pop in and get my absolutely terrible hot takes on whatever is interesting to you at that time. Like, I'm unhinged. I just say whatever.
No, no, that's just part of your charm, Bob. That's why we love you and we keep coming back to
Oh,
your gosh dang store. It's so great.
uh,
But we do have some listener questions, and
yeah,
very excited for the web store. It's very very nice. I mean, like it's important, I think, especially if you're going to carry singles and stuff like that. Um, and these you probably have answered some of these in a way throughout the conversation, but for
just verbatim them, and I'll just even if I retread, like I'd run
yeah,
them. I'd prefer that everybody gets their answer like actually their question actually
absolutely.
answered for me. So
First comes from Greg, aka Darth Prentice, who
okay.
asks, "Would love to know what they think the best thing a person can do to start slash foster a local community."
Um. Yeah. So being on the other side of the counter, that's where I spent most of my life, hanging out in game stores. And I definitely got people into like board games and stuff that I liked back then, by just really being passionate about it and just like you got to read the room, right? So like if you're over there and you're at your LGS and the LGS, you spoke to them behind the counter and you're like, "Hey, I really love Flesh and Blood. It's actually really good for stores. You don't have to like dive in and carry singles, but maybe like squeeze in one little Armory event a week on one of your softest days, whatever." And then I'd be willing to teach people, right? See if they can carry some of the Blitz decks. Ask them to set it to Blitz probably for their armor events. Don't just jump into classic constructors. Nobody's going to have that. And then yeah, just kind of if anybody's even slightly interested, especially if you see a downtrodden Magic player, like anybody who goes like, "Oh, hey, Commander," you can just like weasel right in there. You're like, trying to play this competitive game. Look at how many cool promos. Look how much money the promo is. Look at you could get rich.
Yeah,
Like just on a $30,000 gold foil extended art Crown of Providence. Be like, this.
yeah, that's
Um,
definitely the next step.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just don't tell them the gap between those two
Yeah.
moments for like getting into the game and winning $30,000 cards. But I would start there. I would sit down and try to like, anybody who's even like a little interested, I don't want to tell you to do like a fiscal commitment, but like it's probably easiest if you have a couple of blitz decks sleeved up. The more built, the better, because the blitz decks, the pre-con blitz decks aren't good, but they're, magic terms. They're kind of like 2/2 bears for 4, right? Like they do stuff. They have
Hmm.
a sentence or so written on them, but they're not like, you know, you ain't gonna see anybody get dishonored off of Katsu, right? Like you're not gonna see any of the really cool interactions with like invert existence and like sniping out a Levia transformation or some crazy shit, right? Like you're not gonna see anything super duper cool that
Yeah.
the game does offer. Um, but that's where I would go. And just if you can get, I think the rules is 4 to fire an army. You need 4 players. So if you can get 4 people with blitz precons who are willing to just like duke it out and start farming some cold foils, just be really hyped about it. Get excited, and then when other people are like, "Hey, what is this?" Like, just be really open and willing to talk about the game, like just honestly, right? Like it's a good game. It will stand on its own merits. So.
Yeah. And I will say showing up is also huge. Like if the least you could do is show up, do it,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
I think that bodies in the store playing the game is always the best thing for any game, right? Not just Flesh and Blood. Next question comes from Stoop Kid, who graciously left his stoop to come and ask a question
Mhm.
for this podcast. Would love to know if you have any advice on ways to capitalize on having a dedicated TCG crowd at the game store and how to best introduce them to new games.
Um, Stoop Kid, how do I introduce? So like we do have a dedicated TCG crowd between the Fat players and the Magic players. Introducing them to new games is really just evangelizing it, telling them about it, carrying it. I am a big proponent that I don't feel like I support a game unless I actively run events for it weekly. Carry both carry the seal product and carry singles for it. So and from a store perspective, you can't just do that right off the bat. Like right now, I'm trying to appease all the Lorcana players. Right, we have a lot of Lorcana players. That's a brand new TCG. Plays a lot like Hearthstone, honestly, and I am struggling to get my hands on singles because of scarcity, right? Up until like honestly, like 2 weeks ago, there was just no Lorcana on Earth. There was like wave one of the first chapter, wave one of the second chapter with a small little restock of first chapter in there, and then I've got my distributor emailing me like, give me your numbers for third set, and I'm like, I have no boxes of second set, and I only just got some boxes of first in again. And subsequently, because a lot of the other stores were like marking up, we were selling at MSRP because I just, I don't do that. We were flying out of it, and nobody was selling their singles back because they're like, and I need 4 Aladdins, and I have 2 Aladdins. So why would I sell you my 2 when I need 2 more? Do you have 2 Aladdins? It's like, well, no, nobody wants to give me Aladdin, so what can I do? So, but yeah, that's kind of the answer. If you build it, they will come,
Yep.
right? Just if you want to get people into Grand Archive, plays kind of like Flesh and Blood, a lot of anime art, which is not my vibe, but like if it's your vibe, dope. Yeah, just ask the store to order some. Tell them you'll buy it. That's usually a great way to get it in the thing. Buy freaking 4 of the 8 precons or whatever it is, sleeve them up, and just run around and ask your homies in the TCG community.
Yeah.
Just be a just be a part of the community, really. Just
Yeah.
get in there.
Get in there. Next comes from Sigma, who asks, "Do you build commoner decks to offer to new players, and what do you do with the leftover cards, like extra commons and rares from openings? Do you sell them?"
Yeah. So, I don't build commoner decks. We do actually have like 4 floating around. It was a entry vector that we considered for new players, so we do have like a couple in the store that don't really get utilized. What I found to be better was just like literally using my personal blitz decks to teach people. I think blitz is just it's fast. It's 20 life most of the time, so that feels familiar. And it's a little bit easier to get people in than commoner. Even though commoner is so inexpensive, I think most people getting into a card game are not going to be sticker shocked. Actually, I think they often get reverse sticker shocked because like a lot of people have been lied to, in my opinion, on the internet. Like I know on like MTG sick deals on Facebook, I see people who say like, will like meme. They'll be like, "Ha, well, at least it ain't Fab," and I'll always come in there and correct that record. I'm like, I remember buying 4 Force of Wills at $120 each. You son of a bitch. Okay, don't tell me a fucking $60 Crown of Providence is expensive. You only need one. It'll work for all of your decks forever. Okay, so I will. I get very cranky when I see that sentiment. So,
Yeah.
um, I think that Commoner would probably work. I'm saying do Blitz, but there's no real way that Commoner wouldn't work. Just have some decks that people can play, be familiar with them, explain them in terms if you can that they will understand, and just introduce it. As to the other question, am I selling commons and rares? Yes, asterisks. I have lots of commons and rares from openings and from buying collections and stuff like that. Whether or not I have them on the website and sorted is another story for commons and rares. You'll find every basically majestic and legendary minus anything that came in maybe like this week is on our web store, gildredavengames.com. Or you can come in person. That would be easier if you live in Somerset. I don't know where you live, but if uh, if you're around, you could pop in and then we could go play the. I'm trying to think of a rare off the top of my head. How many Emeritus Scaldings do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played
So.
that game at Gilded before. I'm like, I need
Oh yeah.
Oasis Respites. I'm like, where? And you're like, good luck. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm digging.
I'm like,
Um,
it's in one of these 5K boxes. There's definitely 70 in there. Just yeah.
um, next question comes from Pat Shaw from Off
Sure.
the Rails TCG.
All right, Pat.
There's a lot of discourse on social media lately around the viability of LGSs buying product for Fab and selling it in
Sure.
singles and it being profitable now.
Sure.
So you've hinted at some of this already. There are more stores picking it up and still some stores dropping it altogether. What are ways you as a store have been able to be successful leveraging Fab in your market? What's the outlook of the future sets and how you think they'll fare in the store?
Yeah, so future sets, I mean, like all card games, every set is sort of dependent, right? Like if Flesh and Blood said like the next set is heavy hitters and it's Guardians, Brutes, and Warriors, and that's really cool. And the set after that is all wizards. It's the all wizard set, and we're just like slinging spells and we're just mages, just just duking it out at the Wizard Academy or whatever. And then the set after that was like the daisy pickers, and we actually only picked flowers. There's no flesh nor is there blood. It's just flower picking. And the community was like, and it's all AI art, and they snubbed all the artists and stuff. Like, would that set do well? Probably not.
I don't think so.
So maybe be tepid on that one. Maybe just a few cases, right? Like maybe don't buy the flesh and blood version of Homelands or whatever, right? Like don't do that. If that were the case, that won't be the case though. But yeah, as far as fiscal viability, we have a really large fab community, and when you have a really large community of any game in your store, you should almost certainly be um, carrying singles. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do mass box cracks. You just need to be willing to maybe buy um, collections, right? Like we I have a couple people who try to find decent collections on the internet. I can't do it myself anymore because I keep getting this situation where I'm like, "Hey, how much are you looking for this?" And like I pitch them a number, and they want it to be a little higher. Then they go like, "Hey, aren't you Bob with Gilded Raven Games?" I'm like, "Oh, shit. Yep, yeah, hi, that's me." And they're like, "Why is it higher?" And I'm like, "Well, it's margins, right? Like I can still do business, unfortunately." And I'm usually pretty receptive to that. But
Yeah.
I sneaky buy collections. But that that being said, that is a way to go about it. You can also do mass box cracks. It depends on what you're selling your boxes for, right? Like, Flesh and Blood has instituted a 15% map, which is an acronym that I totally remember because I'm a big good business guy. And in that acronym, it basically says, "Don't sell it under this amount of percentage off, or we'll shoot you with a sniper." Um, and so while I always have the little red beads on my chest, I maintain its map. And I don't sell under that. I know some game stores will get stuck on stuff, right? If they don't have a community, it's a little dangerous, right? Like I don't have a community for trying to think of a card game, the sorcery, right? It would
Mm-hmm.
be very, very insane for me to go and buy, a palette of sorcery, right? When I have one
Sure.
guy in my store who's like, Bob, play sorcery with me. And I'm like, this plays like, what's that board game? Summoner Wars, but with the gotcha mechanic of cracking packs. No. But like, you know, is cracking boxes viable? Yes. If you're getting them at the distributor rates, I know some of the other bigger stores. I talk lightly with Peter of Minmax and Spencer from Magnolia, and I know that they get better prices than I do. Um, so if you get better prices than if your game store is older than mine and you buy a shitload of one of the big three, you're probably going to get better prices than I do because my store is only going to open for a year. You should definitely be able to make a profit opening by the case. Just remember, like we do by case because legendary pull rates and cold foils.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what you want to do. No, I wouldn't just do a box or whatever. And then yeah, I mean carrying singles, it's a double-edged sword in the sense for Flesh and Blood right now because TCG players, sorting machines do not have the AI for Flesh and Blood. It only does it for like Magic and I think Pokemon. So if you're one of those really, really big game stores and you rely on a machine to do it, um, beware. At least in the for now.
Yeah.
I know the second TCG player sends me an email and they said, "Oh, Fab can be done by a machine." I'm gonna be like, Gib, Gib machine," because a lot of times the sorting is me, just sitting here in my office. I recently moved, so my place is also a mess. Actually, that's kind of fun and exciting. That is my wife's beginnings of a Levia Redeemed cosplays.
Ooh. Very cool. Uh,
Or maybe it's me. I just want to look red. I don't know. Could be one or the other. Who knows?
Listen, I'm looking forward to it either way. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And QDs and stuff like that exist in the supplier world and
Sure.
and wholesaler world. So like, it's just a matter of if you can turn a profit and if you
Yeah.
think you can, and the community is the first thing you got to have, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, you
that's
have to have that community. You got to build it. Like you do have to take a little bit of risk, right? Like if you want to have any community, Flesh and Blood or any other game sorcery, like you're gonna have to buy some of it. You're gonna have to get some of those precons. You're gonna have to open them up. You're gonna have to teach people. You're just gonna have to commit. If you own an LGS, like obviously you know what your budget looks like. You understand what your money, your finances are. So like it's easier than if you're just walking into the local game store and you're like, I love Flesh and Blood. I play on Talishar all day long. I'm sure somebody else here would like it too. Please carry this product line. Depending on their finances, you may get more or less pushback, but you could always, like I said, just buy a couple Blitz decks online or whatever, sleeve them up, sit around your game store, and just anybody who seems kind of interested. Maybe you and a friend sit in your game store all day playing, and if anybody comes by and goes, "Ooh, what's that?" Just take Timmy. Just plant your foot in his face, knock him out of the chair, throw him out the door, set up this, dust off the seat and set, Todd down and be like, here, Todd, I'll teach you Flesh and Blood, and deal with the cops in 15 minutes after you just assaulted Timmy brutally.
Yeah, well,
Um,
Timmy was just leaving anyway. You can sit
but yeah,
down,
we'll stick with the moral. Let's stick with Blitz because if it's CC and you're playing a fatigue deck, like the cops are going to get you for over the Timmy situation before you finish your match.
Um, so, and the last question here is from Capolo. Pretty simple one. Has anyone ever tried to sell fake cards to the store?
Fake cards. No one would ever do that. Fake which cards? Flesh and Blood or Magic? Because for Flesh and Blood, no. I am the person who verifies every card. And all of our fab stuff is been real, continues to be real, and has been real, which is great. Magic. Oh yeah. There's been a few occurrences. One fake actually did slip past one of my employees. Like he had bought a whole bunch of real stuff, and one really, really inexpensive, like $2 card in there was fake. And then one of my other employees had like felt it and was like, "This is weird." And then
Mm-hmm.
Jewelers looped it, Green Dot tested it, and failed. So that's like the one single like $2 like uncommon or whatever that slipped through. I have had some sad experiences. There was a guy who got into Magic very recently, and he got in because he really loved the Junji Ito art for, I think, Shoulder the Apocalypse. I think that's one he did. Maybe it was Elish Norn. I don't remember exactly, but it was one of the Praetors that Junji Ito, the manga artist, had done. And he had come in and he was like, "Hey Bob, could you check that this card's real for me? I think it might be fake." And I was like, "Okay, interesting request." And I grabbed out my loop, and yeah, it was fake. It was a
Hmm.
pretty good fake, but it failed green dot. And I was like, "Yeah, this is fake." I have a tendency to like to destroy fake cards immediately on site because I don't like them being in circulation. I did elect to give it to him because he was like, "Well, I'm gonna see if I can bring it back to the game store I bought it from, and maybe they will either reimburse me or give me a real one instead." Because he like had his receipt or whatever, and I was like,
Hmm.
"Well, good luck." Um, and I also had a guy come in with a whole collection of fake stuff. Very like maybe a month ago, he came in with a ton of expeditions. So these are like, if you don't know Magic, these are like fancy versions of somewhat expensive lands, and the fakest goddamn stained glass window Liliana Dreadhorde General I've ever seen in my life. Which was like, so I started picking them up and thumbing through them, and I was like, these don't feel right. Or actually, sorry, my employee David started with it and was like, "Hey Bob, can you come here?" I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." I took the Liliana. I was like, "This is fake." Like I didn't even have to. I was like, "I know this is fake." And then I went through and I was like two of these cards might be real. And I sat there and I looped through them all, and I was like, "All right, like these are two that I think are real. These are like seven that are definitely not real." And in that situation, I was like, "I am sorry, I am not going to buy any of this." Like
Yeah.
even these two probably real cards, I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Uh,
You
the
got to
thing
put your
is,
foot down in that situation. So.
yeah, I just don't really like. You can't have fake cards in your store. Like that'll destroy your credibility. Like
Oh yeah.
you can't do that. And I have a few. I have like a little box of fake cards that were given to me from the old from one of the old managers of the only game in town after they closed as like training purposes. So like I do train the employees. And like there's a wooded flooded foothills or whatever it is, the blue white fetch land that the white portion looks yellow, and otherwise it looks very real, but like we call that the PP card because it just looks like someone peed on it. It's pretty funny. But, like we have a little fake trainer thing, so like if anybody is feeling, you know, unconvinced about the authenticity of a card, they can double check those. They can check the real ones from our case, or they can always just summon me, right? Like it just takes like one goat sacrifice, five black candles, and a pentagram, and like bam, I appear. So
Well,
um,
that's what I had to do to get you on the podcast. So.
that's literally what you did. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It actually
yeah.
worked. It works. I mean, like
It
if it
works.
works, it
Yep.
works. So
Mhm.
but
That's how I appear. That is right.
anyway, Bob, this has been a lot of fun. I hope you had a good
Thanks.
time. I know all the listeners enjoyed this, and the viewers, and you know, I appreciate your insight, especially as someone, when I look at like huge community leaders, we have some bigger ones out in the world. Like you got like the Realm Games who does their stuff. Min Max is obviously very involved. Magnolia, um, and especially talking to like John from Green Tree Sports Cards,
Mhm.
and especially when I talked to John, I was like, man, it's like I'm talking to Bob from Gilded Raven. So like I think that the paradigm is all kind of there, right? Like everybody kind of agrees, and this is why Flesh and Blood ends up being successful. So I want to focus on, I love my home state, New Jersey. I got big ups for Jersey. So, but thank you for coming on. I'd like you to plug anything you like to plug. I know you mentioned the web store's up, and if you want to, everything will be in the show notes as well. But anything you want to plug.
Yeah, well, I mean, first, thanks for having me on. This is a great opportunity and a blast. Just to hang out with you. I don't get to see as much as I'd like to, so this is awesome. And as far as plugging things goes, I guess, our web store, gilderravengames.com, great way to support us. If you're ever in the Somerset area, we're 120 Cedar Grove Lane in Somerset, right off 287 next to 10. Come in. Saturdays is our Flesh and Blood Day. You will catch on-demand drafts firing all day and all night long. If you've ever been to our store, you know that I am nocturnal. I barely woke up for this interview at 3 o'clock. And subsequently, I keep the store open to like 3, 4 in the morning on like a Thursday because I'm a goddamn degenerate. But like we will fire drafts all night long. We will play seals. We will just fire additional whatever. We'll just if it's flesh and blood, we love it. On Saturdays, come on in, come on down, have a good time, spend the whole day with us. And uh, and yeah, as far as some of those names you've mentioned a minute ago, I'm not at liberty to say that there's some fun stuff on the horizon that we're gonna
I
get to do.
I think that sounds like a lot of fun, and please keep your ears and eyes open for anything exciting coming down the pipes. You can all continue to find me on Twitter at freshbudspod. Check out the YouTube. Give us a like, comment, subscribe. It helps the show. Heavy Hitters spoiler coming January 17th. Well, January 17th, New Zealand time. I need to figure out what that means for me. But it is coming, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to spoil another card for this game that I truly, truly love. And Bud's Discord. Check out the Bud's Discord. Everything's in the link tree below. And Bob, I always like to talk a little bit about food at the end of every episode. What's some food you want to feature? Something you're enjoying recently, something that you're like people should try.
Tommy, I love food. I'm so good at being fat. Food that people should try.
Well, it's anything, something that you've been enjoying lately. You know, whatever. When last time I had Dan Rakowski on. He shouted out Curry Zone, which is a few doors down.
Oh yeah, right next door. Yeah, we love Curry Zone. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, Curry Zone's so good. I always tell everybody over there, get the chili chicken dry. They're always like, what? Why would I want dry? I'm like, dry just means it's in a sauce, not a gravy. Like chili chicken dry, it's good. Yeah, shouting out food. You know what? My favorite go-to restaurant is a Mexican barbecue place hybrid in the town of Manville. It's called Grub Hut. My wife and I, you can catch us there kind of frequently. We love it for lunches. They have their Caesar salads. They make a fresh Caesar dressing. They put a little fun spin on it that I'll let you discover for yourself if you manage to drop by. But it's all fresh dressing, not like bottle squares. Like so. Also, I guess if you're a vegan, don't eat it because real Caesar dressing is made with anchovies.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my shout out. Grub Hut in Manville, all the food there. It's very good. Would recommend. It's right on Main Street, right across from the Walmart and like McDonald's, like that, and like the movie theater. It's right over there.
Love that movie theater. Shout out Manville. All right. Well, unfortunately, we had talked about Manville so long that I can't get to Charmer today, but maybe next week. Everybody, please enjoy your holiday. Reach out if you're feeling lonely or anything like that. Sometimes the holidays suck. Guess what? The buds don't suck. Check out the Buds Discord. Love you all.